So most of you are seasoned sailors by now, even if it's the first time you get on the ship and I've gone through the Drake, infamous Drake, right? So we were chatting earlier, and this is something you might have heard about, the Beaufort wind scale. Just a little bit of information about that. Now, Sir Francis Beaufort, an Irishman, young officer of the Royal Navy, he actually has a connection with the places we are traveling because he was the one that's responsible for devising this wind scale in 1805. Now, before that, you can imagine the captains getting together after they've been all over the world, chatting and having a beer or something. Oh, my gale was bigger than yours, you know, like fishermen. No, I had 10 meters swell, and we had 20 meters swell, and the masts were, you know, there was no agreement. It was very arbitrary. And what he intended with this scale is to have some kind of agreement in which to describe the conditions of the ocean, conditions of the weather, the sea, and the wind. And there is further connection because he, as a young officer, was commissioned to study. He was an hydrographer, the Rio de la Plata estuary. Basically, if you ask me, my country is El Rio de la Plata, where we started this trip. I know some of you are coming from way up north in Florida, but anyway, around Buenos Aires, Montevideo, he actually did a lot of work there, and the Admiral was so impressed that he was a young officer quickly gaining positions within the Royal Navy. He was head of a hydrological office for many, many years. And there's further more connection with our trip because it was after, you know, a little bit of a trial and error and so on. This system, and it's in place until now, of course now with technology it's different, but the system remains the same or similar. It was first officially used in the HMS or during the HMS Beagle expedition, in which Captain Robert Fitzroy was in command. One of these trips, Darwin was on board, and we are going to the Beagle Channel after Antarctica. So you see how the connections are kind of dots tied together. So these two images don't show anything. They're totally confusing, small font, and I will make a simpler way to understand the Beaufort scale. If you were with me a few minutes, Beaufort goes from 0 to 12, although some people want to add a few more after that, but let's say the traditional. Instead of reading the effects on land and the sea, let's illustrate it with these old photos from the Navy, in which we'll describe very briefly the condition. So basically Beaufort, 0 to 12. The wind rating, speed in meters per second or in knots, don't get confused with numbers. In green, the effects on land, which are not too conspicuous because you're in the ocean anyway. And the sea state, which is more interesting. And now I took in the liberty of adding an extra thing, which is, let's say, the unofficial Beaufort scale, which is a sailor's psychological state, right? So let's move onwards. Beaufort 0, like, you know, come on, are you kidding me? There's nothing there. If you're on land, the smoke will rise vertically, not even a breeze. The sea is like a mirror, and the sailor is suffering great boredom, right? Beaufort 1, you have 2 knots of wind, light air, still a very gentle breeze will have trouble identifying, and our sailor is still bored, and the sea doesn't look anymore like a mirror. There's a bit of a ripple here and there. Beaufort 2, a light breeze. You can feel that breeze in your face if you're standing on land. The ocean will have very small wavelets, and our sailor is just feeling a little bit of pleasure, saying, okay, I signed up the Navy, now let's conquer the world. And Beaufort 3, things get more interesting. Gentle breeze. You have flags flapping on land, right? If you have a mast with a flag. Larger wavelets in the ocean, and then our sailor is, you know, his chest is going up, and he's, oh, there we go, pleasure. Beaufort 4, 13 knots of wind, a little bit more. Moderate breeze, small branches of trees begin moving and sort of swaying one way and the other. The waves are becoming longer, and you start spotting the very first whitecaps in the ocean. Our sailor is filled with great pleasure. Beaufort 5, we continue within the breeze. We still don't have like proper wind. Small trees move. You know, we had branches moving earlier, now the whole tree's moving a little bit. And moderate waves, more whitecaps, widespread whitecaps around the ocean, and a little bit of spray, bits of water flying out, becoming airborne, and our sailor is totally full of delight. So, Beaufort 6, strong breeze. Now, larger branches in trees, we're talking about serious trees, are starting to move. Large waves forming under the ocean. Extensive whitecaps everywhere, and more spray up in the air. And our sailor is still in the light, you know, sure of himself, And there's a tinge of anxiety coming here and there, and this poor man there. Buffer 7, the whole tree's moving now, right? The sea's heaving up, waves are increasing.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. Well, it is a beautiful day, as it has been the whole day, and we are now passing the first rather large iceberg of Seabourn, and that's a penguins on top of it, so for those who are interested, have a look.
Thanks, Captain. Right on time. So we'll see plenty more of these. Of course, you're welcome to go outside. We have a few more minutes to go there. Buffer 7, our sailor has anxiety tinged with fear. Buffer 8, you're in a gale now, so a proper storm, let's say. The twigs of those trees have fallen off and gone with the wind. The waves are growing and growing and growing. Our sailor has fear tinged with terror. Buffer 9, there is a structural damage on buildings and structures on land. The waves are high. The streaks of foam are forming perpendicular to the shape of the waves. And our sailor is full of great terror, asking why on earth he signed into the Navy. Buffer 10, storm. The trees are uprooted, falling on the ground, no longer standing. Very, very high waves with long overhanging crests. The surface of the sea takes on a white appearance. The rolling of the sea becomes heavy and shock-like, and our sailor is full of panic. But still, the story doesn't end there. You're in a violent storm. Buffer 11. More trees, more damage, and there's even room for more panic. Now we're reaching the end of the scale at Buffer 10, when you're in a hurricane, more than 70 knots of wind, and then you can imagine the damage and what the conditions of the sea. There's no visibility, foam flowing here and there. But what we want to know truly is what's happening to our sailor. There's no more room for terror, nor any panic. Just pray. Now.
Thank you very much, Luki.
Yes.
And ladies and gentlemen, we'd like